This video begins near the house where I got the super rod. The reason for this is because I wanted to spare you the bike ride, the minute-long bike ride between Lavender and this house. And I still haven't fully recovered from my Zapdos catch. This really was the best catch I've ever had. I usually have rotten luck with legendaries, so this is quite a shock to me that I have accomplished this. Now, before I move on to Pokemon talk, I just wanted to make something clear. I've had a lot of comments regarding the Montreal Canadiens in my videos. Just to make one thing perfectly clear, just because I'm from Quebec doesn't mean I root for the Canadiens. No, no, no. My team is the Colorado Avalanche. Remember that. And thus begins the massive downvoting of this video. But I don't care! Go ahead and do it! And yeah, I know the Avalanche sucks this year, but I'm still standing by my team, just like you Canadiens fan stood by your team for those 15, now 16 years without a single Stanley Cup. So, that's it for hockey, back to Pokemon. Just a bit of trivia regarding Zapdos. It's one of only 5 legendaries who did not keep their Japanese name in the translation. Those 5 Pokemon are the 3 legendary birds, Mesprit and Azelf. I remember when Cerebi revealed Azelf's English name, it was a few days actually before the big leak, and Cerebi especially mentioned the fact that it doesn't mean that all the legendaries will keep their Japanese names anymore. But in the end, they all kept their Japanese names anyway, except for Mesprit and Azelf. So yeah, just because 2 of them changed names doesn't mean the others will. And while I was talking about that, you may have noticed that, you know that trainer that was behind the bush that I used cut on? When I fought that trainer, after the battle, the bush was back. I don't think this occurs in later generations, and it's kind of annoying really because I have to go in the Pokemon menu again in order to cut that plant again, which can get annoying. I swear, I'm really starting to feel like doing a Crystal LP after this one is done, just so I won't have that kind of problem anymore. Now, just one more note about the Zapdos capture. Of course, you didn't get to see it because all I needed was 1 ball in order to catch it. But I wanted you to see it nonetheless. You'll surely see it for Articuno and Moltres. But one thing that's special about the legendaries in this game is that among the possible outcomes for when you actually miss the capture, there's an animation that, well, you throw the ball at the legendary and you actually miss the thing. Now, how you could miss those freaking huge birds while flinging a Pokeball at, say, a Diglett and nailing it every time, that just doesn't make sense. If anything, you should at least nail the bird every time and the Diglett a lot less often, but that's not the case. I suppose this is just to make the legendary capture feel special, you know, and maybe if you actually get the bird inside the ball, your heart jumps for a second, and then it wiggles once and twice, and then it gets out, just for an opportunity for the game to taunt you. Now, still on the subject of Zapdos, well, you know how way back at the beginning of the game I talked about weird occurrences that occurred when a type cancels the other out in terms of effectiveness, such as, for example, well, an electric attack against Zapdos, it's not very effective against electric, but super effective against flying, and the game says it's super effective. Now, I have tested that after finishing part 63. I went to Zapdos, I didn't save, obviously, and I tried to compare the damage that Thunderbolt did to Zapdos, a non-stabbed Thunderbolt, of course, and a non-stabbed Psychic. And both dealt the same damage, but Thunderbolt said it was super effective. The game said Thunderbolt was super effective. Well, it's not. It's not super effective. It deals exactly the damage you'd expect from it. Neutral. So it's actually the message and the sound effect when you hit the Pokemon. Those are glitches. Those aren't supposed to occur because you really hit the Pokemon for neutral. Now what decides whether it's super effective or not very effective? Well, what the message says anyway, and I honestly have no clue, and it seems like no one has a clue either. But that message isn't supposed to be there. You're dealing neutral damage. That's it. That's out. In other news, the stats for Smogon's Shoddy server have been uploaded for the month of January, and I have a few things to say about that. First, if you've read my winners and losers column last month, then you may have noticed that I've said that Porygon 2 was on the verge of passing Porygon Z in terms of use. Now that's not happened quite yet, though it is closing in still, but if the tier list were to be redone this month, then Porygon 2 would be overused. Think about it for a second. An overused Pokemon that still evolves into something else, that would be quite a feat. And, you know, people have been talking for so long about Scyther being the be-all, end-all Pokemon that's not fully evolved when it comes to competitive battle, but it could never accomplish that. It could never get out of underuse, and so the thing that Porygon 2 is accomplishing, it's simply astounding. Now the reason why it's so far up there is because of Trace. And I never really expected Trace to be that useful, but right now it's a really cool metagaming solution. It screws over Salamence, Gyarados, and Heatran hardcore, Vaporeon and Jolteon as an added bonus, and if you can somehow switch it into a Shedinja, then you've pretty much won the battle. And another thing I wanted to point out is that new teammate list thing that's been added to the stats. While I'm not expecting anyone to learn it by heart, it's still interesting to look at the patterns. So, for example, I didn't know Skarmory was still used that much until I saw this. Now, of course, it's still a pretty effective wall combo, but using it the same way you used it back in the last 2 generations, especially Gold, Silver, and Crystal, that combo was nearly unstoppable. But now it's just 2 very good walls that excel independent, whether they're independently of each other or when they're both used together. But using the combo the same way we did in the 2nd and 3rd generation, now it's suicide, mostly thanks to the physical special split. Now you can hit Blissey fairly hard with special fighting moves, and Skarmory can be hurt quite a bit with physical electric moves as well, though the most prominent physical electric attacker often uses Thunderbolt still for deterring out Skarmory. Now just one note about the game, since maybe you've been watching it instead of listening to me rant, but I've been fighting with Zapdos for all this video, and it still doesn't look like I'm anywhere close to getting a level up so I can learn Thunder. Of course, I could have used the Thunderbolt TM, but I did use it, but on Gengar, and I don't regret that decision at all. Yeah, she doesn't know anything about Pokemon. Yeah, living proof that you need more than 5 feet of blonde hair to be a Pokemon champion. You also need an Uber with Giga Impact.